welcome to Sturgis. Thank you for having me. When I was first asked to speak, I quite frankly said, what do I have to tell? A lot of neat things happening. It's been a journey as I put this slide presentation together for you. It was fun because it made me think back to some of the things I've done. It's been pretty interesting. First thing I did is I went online because I wanted to make sure I knew what that word meant. Interestingly enough, the article I read said 50% of the people out here don't understand what an entrepreneur is. Well, that's me. I don't know. I just run a business. I do my thing. Part of the thing they mentioned, and I loved it, was where dreams meet ambition. I put a lot of thought to that, and you start thinking about that. I've known a lot of people that had great dreams, and them dreams died with them, right? They never moved forward. I've also met a lot of people with a ton of ambition, mass chaos, and they don't get nothing done either. How do you blend them two together to get a job done, to get a business going? I'm going to go down that journey with you. I'm not going to read my slides, so I hope you all can read. If you can't, have somebody read it for you. Because I'm not reading it. I don't like them kind of presentations. But I also don't remember where I'm going, so I need these slides to help me out. Okay? So if you would, I have to do this myself, don't I? Oh, you already moved me. No, go back. So just in case you were wondering what an entrepreneur is, there's the definitions I found. And I will read this part. A person who starts a business and is willing to risk loss in order to make money. Cut and dried. There's a lot of risk in running businesses, and boy, have I experienced a few of them. Coming down there, I make mention that at the age of 13, after I read that definition, I remembered back. Can you go to the next slide for me? Is this the button right here? Okay. I started delivering newspapers at the age of 13. I didn't realize then that I was in business, but I sure was. They delivered newspapers to my door. I went out, I had to canvass the street, I had to find my customers, I had to pay my bills, and whatever was left over was mine. That was a great time. Taxes were not involved. I really got to keep it. But, along the way, I found two things that have really done me good the rest of my life. Is you get into good customers, how do you treat them? And I found out real early if little Miss Barnell wants her paper in her milk can, put it there, because at Christmas time I get a pie, or I got a nice tip. You took care of your good customers, right? And I also found out, unfortunately, at the age of 13, 14, 15, there's a lot of people that don't pay their bills. Boy, I still experience that today. Bad experience at 14. It gives you a really sour taste, but I'm going to get this right. All right. So I'm going to start down the journey. As I said, I started as a paper boy. I come in and out of business numerous times. I've worked for quite a few companies in a lot of different capacities, but my heart's always been in the self-driven side of business. I started Harrison Design at the age of 21 years old. I was a plastic injection mold designer, and I was working for a company that was downsizing, having a tough time. If we all remember them days, interest rates were probably floating near 20%. I started business. My boss told me, if you want to still work, I'll give you work, but I can't afford you to put you on payroll. So there I go. So things I did learn in a hurry. Self-employment taxes, holy cow. How do you market your product at a cost that overcomes that? And then medical insurance. Now I don't have medical insurance. I have to buy that for myself. I found out I costed myself really cheap. It looked like a lot of money at the time, but when you're charging what I was charging, it was going negatively. I decided to get out of business and go work for somebody else at that time. Because the last thing I didn't have back then is discipline. My friends would call me up and say, hey, you want to go out and party? It's like, yeah, I'll do that later. Well, later is difficult. At 2 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to get a job done and you've had one too many to drink. From there, I worked in the private sector for quite a while for other people. And then an opportunity came up in Sturgis with my wife. We decided to open up another store. And we opened up Picture That. We got into Picture That. Oh my God, now you're getting into financing. We borrowed money. Went around to all the different banks and couldn't find a single bank that wanted to do anything with us. Pretty frustrating. You think you got a great product, but when they analyze it, it doesn't look as good on paper. I was told by an accountant a few years back that usually very highly intelligent people don't go into business because they're too analytical. They study the project and they look at it and say, I got to cover my risk, I got to cover my liabilities, I got to do this, I got to do that. And they opt out of it. They're like, you can't make money doing this. Well, that's about where we were when we were doing this. And then I had a banker in town that fell over backwards for us, Leonard Eischen. I was in the office at Sturgis Bank and Trust. He was walking by. There was a gentleman by the name of Jack Bell that was working on me, and Leonard talked to me about it for a minute, and he just looked at Mr. Bell and said, hey, can you make this happen? Get all excited. It's like, I think we're going to get a loan. That was great until you realized the loan was more than the price of your house, and now you're scared to death. And then the next thing I learned is as you pay down debt, I thought that was part of my expense of being in business until the end of the year, and I found out that everything I paid my debt down with was called this thing called profits. And I got this bill for Uncle Sam that says I owe this much money and there's nothing in the checkbook. Lessons learned. You got to plan for that stuff. While we were I already got you, sorry. I saw you writing. I was watching you. While we were in Picture That, I took over my wife's upstairs of her building, started Cadtech. I went back into mold design for a second time. That's where I'd spent over 20 years of my life in between this stuff, very skilled at it. So I went into consulting and did mold design. One of the things that, again, you look at how you develop as a person. I took on a partner for the first time. Rusty Smith was dynamite. He come to work for me, one of the smartest guys I ever met. I realized, boy, if you want to keep this guy, how do you do it? So I offered him some stake in the company. That event changes quite a few events down the road because that friendship's become astronomical. And we've been great partners ever since. So different slides as we go through, I'll point out where he's still involved and we're still in business today. So Cadtech was just a great learning curve. And probably the biggest thing I learned getting back into that type of a business, and some of you already might be involved in that, but you get into a business where you're only making money when you're at your seat. So when you're out canvassing the road and you're out marketing and selling, there's nobody working, making any money. Had to find a way to change that. That's when VCI came aboard. We found a company. I started searching all over the place. I opened up myself to a 4-state area and said, where can I find a company that I can grow? Lo and behold, I found the assets to a company right here in Sturgis in our hometown. We bought the assets out. It's in the material handling space, which is customized racks. That's been, from a business side, the best move I ever made. You get into a company, you start running it right, and literally we went from 9 employees the first year. We had a pro forma that was meant to be a 5-year pro forma. Year 2, we've already blown that away. I had a shutdown plan for over 2 years. Every single month I looked at the business going, if we're not making money, I'm going to shut this baby down. And every month it's doing good and it's doing good. And we got beyond that stage where you're running to the post office hoping the check's in the mail. The line of credit's being tampered really close to the line every time. That was great. We got away from that. Since then, VCI has just become an outstanding company. We employ 200 people here in Sturgis. We have another location I'll be talking about in a minute down in South Carolina. But what we figured out as we went here is really the relationships you start to build. The banking relationship that we built back at Picture That carried over to VCI. They took another chance on me. The insurance people, the accountants, all them kind of people, because there's so many things you don't know when you start business. You are literally naive to the world. That's why you do it, right? You don't know the difference. If you knew what you're getting into, you might not do it. Okay, so we go through a lot of neat things were happening. One thing I really learned was you have to change with the times. Our first product was these little welded up containers and wire baskets. We now make some of the highest end racking that you'll see in the United States. We supply people like Toyota and PACCAR and GM and Ford, and I can go down the list. It's a dynamite list, and we're tier 1 at every one of these customers. As it took off, we needed property. We needed more housing. We were working out of a 6,000 square foot building. You're hitting your goals 5 years out. You needed space. We started S&H Investments to be able to buy property, buy buildings, and grow. VCI started out with 20,000 square foot. We now have 130,000 square foot on Progress Street. We grew that into we needed a technical center on Dresser Drive. We built a building that I actually rented 3 different times before I finally bought it. I moved in and moved out thinking that we didn't need the space. We started our tech center there. Things that I did learn how to do, I learned how to work with contractors. That's a different breed. How mortgages work, how financing works. You're dealing with a whole different level of how everything operates. What that done is put me in a great position as we were growing VCI. The word logistics come involved. You start moving parcels all over the United States, and a truck from Sturgis, Michigan to San Antonio, Texas, about $3,500 a truck. If I'm shipping down south, it's $2,500 a truck. I realized that my customers were figuring my trucking expense into my product, and I was overpricing myself because the trucking cost. We went down to South Carolina, found some pretty good digs down there. I bought out a small manufacturer thinking that was the right way to start. If you can imagine, 30 days to the day of closing, I get a phone call from my general manager. Gene, I don't know what to do, but the whole goddamn thing's burning down. True story, lost it all. Everything burnt. What do? This is where you take all them past experiences you got and you start calling the people you know. Found outstanding people that I ran into. I literally ran into a gentleman by the name of Ron McCracken that I called him to ask to see his building. We're up on this hill. He's showing me this building. It's got all the power in it. It's got all my paint booths in it. It's ready to rock and roll. I says, well, I'll get back to you. He says, hey, I'm going to do you a favor. This man walked over, handed me his keys. Says, just get out here and get your stuff done. Move out when you're done. How do you say no to that? 6 months later, I'm leasing from him. A year later, we bought the building. Just great people. It's relationships. It's how you work with people. I learned that insurance is not a bad word. Yeah. I'm dealing with my insurance guy, and I'm thinking, God, I lost it all. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he comes up to me with a piece of paper, and he just sort of goes, oh, this is the only coverage you got. I looked at the number going, that's pretty good to me. When do I get it? And we started to rebuild. In that flight, I started working with Ray Farley from Pickens County. I had the state in there. I got greeted like nobody ever was. I felt like red carpet. I mean, they even did this big kickoff and had something at the college and announced that we were moving down there. Well, I thought like a big 3, pretty cool stuff. But it's, again, the relationships. Every relationship I built down there is still growing. Lessons learned, probably the biggest one at the bottom, learn to embrace help. Everybody's afraid to ask for help. Man, if I didn't ask for help on this one, I would have closed the doors. Now we get into real fun stuff. You take all that experience that we've gained, and quite a few years back, I sat on the city commission here in town for 4 years. During that time, and I don't even know what year that was, Mike, but you were assistant manager here at that time. There was a plan to change downtown, get a destination restaurant, do a bunch of things. And that plan sat idle for, I don't know, 20 years. Generate Sturgis was having a meeting at the coffee shop over here. I think I met up with Mike, and we started talking, and it's like they got this ideal in my head. My son comes to me and says, Dad, we need something to do in town. Well, I don't call the Wings, etc. something to do in town, but it started that ideal going. How do you get where you're going? What do you want to build? Can we change that building? And this is where, again, working with people, we got the MEDC involved. The county grant writer out in St. Joe County did a fabulous job. Everything started moving forward. We realized, boy, we generate jobs. Stop asking for free money. Let's base it on the jobs you generate. And next thing you know, we were awarded a grant of over $1 million to help do these buildings. Some people think I struck it gold, but I'll tell you, we're spending over $3 million on a project that the assessed value is going to be about half of that when I'm done. Don't get too excited for me. That's an investment in the community, period. This community's been great to me. I drive down that main street just like everybody else does, and I wanted to see it change. Exciting things happened at the same time. Sturgis Bank, who has been a dynamite partner with the downtown area, redoes their building. I hear that Jeremy Gump's putting property over there. Everybody's like, Gene, what do you think of that? I says, this is good. I'm not the only dummy. we have some shared there, you know, and now I'm seeing the excitement. Sturgis is changing slowly. I'm glad to be part of it. Harrison Investment Properties, it was the conduit to get the ball running. In that space, we're putting 3 retail spaces. We're putting luxury apartments up in the upper floors. The apartments we're doing, the building hasn't been used probably since it was a speakeasy. I think that's what the story is. And I think so, because I saw little peepholes and everything up there. No electricity, no plumbing. I don't know what they did in that speakeasy, but it was up there. So we've redone it. Eric Jones, a good friend of mine from town, texted me when I was in Europe last spring. He says, did you intend to take the whole front wall of your building down? We took that building, and when you go by it and you see it in town, we had it opened up like a dollhouse for about a month. We took everything off the front, then we took everything off the back. We have done that building proud. It'll be standing here well past my days. So what we did with that, and the reason we did it, was all about that. We were able to convince Wings, etc., to let us put a franchise downtown. And it didn't come easy. They don't like downtown. Everybody in the restaurant business looks for Walmart or Myers and says, that's where I'm going. I told them, if that's where you want to go, find somebody else. I want to be downtown. I talked to 4 different companies as I was working my way into a franchise, and Wings, etc. took a chance on us. We had to combat everything they threw at me. Not enough parking spaces. So Mike and his team counted parking spaces for me before I could go back. We went for a drive, and we counted all the parking spaces in 5 different wings. And I showed them I had more. And we just kept on doing this over and over. And they finally said, if you want to risk your money, we're in. Sound like a job for an entrepreneur? There's a lot of risk on the line, but it's going to be dynamite.